Welcome once again to 720 and 720. This is John Schulman. And for you Tennessee fans out there, we have your ultimate player that everybody loved, because I think, Dane, everybody could relate to you. Dane Bradshaw, welcome to 720 and 720.
Hey, man, thrilled to be on. I don't know if I deserve that intro. You might have let a lot of people down, but nevertheless, I'm here for the next 20 minutes.
Well, let me just tell you something. They can relate to you because you were unathletic. That's what I'm talking about. No, I'm just messing with you.
I think you've nailed it down perfectly. I can't argue that.
No, I tell you what you were, because I followed your career. I was never at a place good enough to recruit you. What you were is you were a winner. And were you a unbelievable athlete? No. Were you a great shooter? No. Were you this? No. Were you that? No. But at the end of the game, for whatever reason, you always had more points than your opponent. Is that correct or incorrect?
Hey, you're kind to say it. You know, I've been fortunate to play for some great coaches and winning teams, and it's just kind of always, been that way. I've surrounded myself with good teammates, good coaches, and won more games than we lost at White Station under Terry Tippett. You know, I had some good AAU experiences as well, junior high and all of that. But I think Terry Tippett at White Station we exemplified that. Probably my proudest number that I have is we were 137-10 in 4 years at White Station with 3 state titles, and coming from the city of Memphis, that's a lot of wins in a competitive area, and that's not bragging on me, but just pointing towards the team mindset. And we had I never averaged double figures in high school, and that was just the depth of our team, and nobody cared about their own numbers, and all they cared about was winning. And that's, you know, when you learn that stuff at an early age, I think that's something that, as you've seen too, just stays with you forever.
Can you repeat that, please? I need you to repeat something for players, for players and parents, and for coaches know this, but for players and parents. You came out of White Station. You won 3 state championships, AAA, which in Tennessee is the highest level. And you averaged what in high school?
9.4 to be exact. And not only that, but to make it even more impressive, I was the leading scorer at 9.4 points per game. And, you know, whenever I get a chance to talk to young teams or whatever, that's, you know, I'll usually start with, hey, look, I was fortunate enough. I was Gatorade Player of the Year. I was getting recruited by SEC schools. I was going to Nike All-America camps, and I'll say, you know, how many points per game do you think I was averaging to get all that? And usually it's somewhere guessed in the 20 to 30 range, and I'll tell them, no, it was 9.4. And the reason is because our team was champions. And the better the team does, the more the individual benefits. And, you know, coaches like yourself that would come scout and recruit, they could care less about the kid down the street that was getting 23 points per game, but his team was 11-20. You know, they're looking at the kids that are, you know, 30-2 and might be averaging 7 points.
I was always the coach that whoever won the league always got the Player of the Year in the league. Whoever won, I remember convincing my guys in 2009, guys, if we win, you win. It doesn't matter if you're it doesn't really matter, especially in the day and age when there was no internet and there was no web. People didn't know how many points you averaged. They didn't care. If your team won, you won. And I've never seen at the end of a NCAA tournament or a state tournament that the losing team that lost in the quarterfinals got 5 guys on the all-tournament team. You know,
yeah,
you had to give.
I'm a fan of the best player on the best team in terms of you know, postseason awards. I'm with you.
I mean, you had to give the championship team all the spots on the all-tournament team because they won the championship, and that's what you did. I mean, you were and we're going to kind of get into Coach Pearl a little bit too, but your career at Tennessee, that was a joke. Nobody goes from the point to the 4 like you went from the point to the 4. And your first 2 years, you played the point. You played the 1 and the 2, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And when you played Chattanooga in '05 or in '04, Dane, and you came into court, we trapped you a few times, correct?
I knew we'd get to this. That's right.
Hey, listen, I got
Effectively,
some. This
yeah.
may be the first pod. We're going to add some video to this podcast of us trapping you at the end of the half, and also of you walking around the neighborhood in a Spider-Man leotard. I'm not sure you waited for Halloween to use that as an excuse. I mean, your body still, you look pretty good, buddy, for your age guy.
Thanks. Yeah, the Spider-Man outfit, it was just coincidence that was Halloween. I mean, that's usually what I wear on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday anyway.
I thought that. I don't know, but actually you could have traded Spider-Man for Superman, because your last 2 years you were Superman, and you really kind of started. I know Lofton gets some credit for it and all those other guys, but you really kind of exemplified kind of Bruce Pearl and the climb of Tennessee basketball at that time. And explain that to us.
Yeah, I think, and our whole team really, it was a special moment in time because we were underdogs. We were counted out. It wasn't like today's day and age where a coach takes over a team and they can put a roster together because there's so many transfers going on out there that all of a sudden you have 5 new faces or whatever. Like, we were familiar faces. And so it was one of those where, coach will say, the good news is we got everybody coming back. The bad news is we got everybody coming back from a losing team. And that's kind of how people looked at us. And so we were the underdogs, but man, under Bruce Pearl's guidance, put us in positions to be successful. And, that was really when, and it was, it was a result of when I got moved to the power forward spot. It was a result of a couple players getting kicked off the team, some big men, and we decided to go small. And I wasn't a fast, quick player, but all of a sudden, if you put me at the 4 spot, now I was quick for my position, and it became an advantage for us. And what's been really neat is that this was a time where the positionless basketball, that phrase wasn't out there, and it wasn't popular to have the small ball. Now Draymond Green and the Golden State Warriors, I mean, they've sensationalized that. That's everybody has to have a stretch 4, and everybody's trying to go smaller. But man, back in 05, 06, Pearl was kind of the first one, to my knowledge, that really embraced that. Part of that was maybe popular at the mid-major level, but in terms of the highest level and those teams trying to go to that style, it hadn't been done yet. And we were one of the first to do it. And, we did it, kind of out of necessity, but it worked. And, it was Bruce Pearl, giving his players confidence. And, it's just kind of one of those lessons of just be ready for your opportunity. And if that opportunity comes at power forward because somebody gets kicked off the team, so be it. And I was fortunate to be there.
Well, you said something that I think all young coaches, as this podcast, we're trying to help young coaches or young players. So far, you've done both. But you said something, putting players in a position to be successful. And that's a gift of a coach. Just because, I watch my oldest son plays at UAH down in Huntsville, and Lenny Acuff puts guys in position to be successful. Their best post player is a 6'1" point guard, and he puts them down there, and he puts them in a position for him to be successful. Bruce Pearl did that for you, and as a coach, that is a gift. Not everybody, if everybody could shoot it, great, but some guys need to play here and some guys need to play there, and it doesn't matter really what size, and kind of as you go back, positionless basketball. And he did a great job of putting you in a spot where, I kind of read a few things. Dave Odom was talking about you were the MVP of the SEC because of what you did for your team.
Yeah, I think when it all comes down to it as a coach, especially if you don't have the most talented rosters out there. I mean, it's really it's a lot easier to put people in position to be successful if you got a pretty loaded roster. But sometimes when you're not as talented and you're not winning as many games, you get so caught up in looking at your individual players and you start focusing on what they can't do. But if you can focus on what they can do, that's the first step, of getting them in that position to be successful. And to your point, if it's, hey, this kid's undersized, but man, he can front the post better than anybody we got. Let's make him our post player. Or, this kid really plays well in space in the half court. He turns it over a lot. Well, how can we dictate the tempo, speed the game up a little bit for him? So, there's countless examples, but I think it all just goes back to, focusing on what the kid can do instead of what he can't do. And then not only will your team be better, but the player's going to have a lot more confidence because, a lot of these players, whether they're too proud to admit it or not, but, these athletes are as insecure as any humans out there. I mean, they know what their weaknesses are. Sometimes they'll be in denial and be stubborn about it, but if it's getting exposed game in, game out, they lose confidence and you lose confidence in them. So it's just about trying to focus on, all the strengths that a player has and, hide their weaknesses as best you can.
And you sure you didn't want to get in coaching? Because, you talk like a coach. Forget about the broadcast. If you as a coach can focus on what the player can do, and I think young coaches, y'all need to listen to that. Focus on what they can do instead of dwelling on what they can't do. Work on the stuff that they can't do, but really focus and get really good on what they can do. And if a guy can really shoot it, man, get him in a space where he can make shots, or it's your job to find him ways to get shots, and so he can shoot the ball and play to his strength. Coach Bradshaw, you're pretty good, buddy.
No, I don't know, man. I've just been around enough good coaches and experienced it. But the purpose of your podcast is to give personal experiences on this stuff, and I benefited greatly from it. I've been on both ends of it. I'm not going to throw other coaches that I've had under the bus, but I'll talk more about the great experiences that I had in it. And it was always that way, whether it was Coach Tippett at White Station or Bruce Pearl at Tennessee. And, because I was a player that had my share of weaknesses due to athleticism, speed, not a great shot, all those things that you mentioned in the open.
I didn't mention that. I was just joking. I was just kidding.
Hey, it's the truth, though. But the beauty of it was when I had a coach say, but, hey, despite all that, we're usually better when he's on the court, or look at the plus minus or whatever it might be. And when you're a player that can bring something to the table, there's nothing more frustrating than having a coach that can't recognize some of that. And you're not perfect, but man, when you do get a coach that can embrace that, it means a lot. And everybody has their different styles, but I'll tell you, Pearl was so great at giving players confidence. Sometimes I was, too smart for my own good in that matter, because I knew when he'd be trying to pump up confidence that wasn't real. He's like, man, Bradshaw, you're about to get hot, man. I can feel it. I'm like, yeah, I appreciate it, Coach, you're saying that. I'm due for my last 20. But in the film room and stuff, if a guy wasn't playing good, we'd be, we might be watching film of the previous game, and he'd point out, the best screen that got set the entire game could be this player right here. And you knew internally in your mind, I was like, all right, he's doing that because that guy hadn't had much good PR for the past 5 games. And coach is trying to point him out, amongst the team and talk about something good he's doing. And so everybody's got their own style, but, and you got to, it's a fine line because you want to be real with the players. You want to give them confidence, but as long as they're accountable, then you can continue to do that. If they take advantage of all the praise that you're giving them and it makes it feel like the bad things they've done are okay and getting dismissed, then it doesn't work. So I think it's just having that judgment and being able to read if you have an accountable team or not. If they're accountable players, you can pay them compliments because they're going to be hard enough on themselves. But if you got some guys that are pretty soft, then you might have to send a message at times.
You just got to convince them that they're tough. But, there's nothing better for a coach to do than give a kid belief. And we are at a strange time in the game of basketball, and kids growing up, everybody's got belief and almost sometimes too much belief. But you kind of hit on Coach Pearl a little bit. Give young coaches 2 or 3 things. What makes him different? What makes him special? I love the fact that you brought up what made you different and special. Guys averaging 9 points a game now that's I can't do that, and parents are going, Dane, you got to get some shots up, man. We got to get recognized. We got to get, once again, if your team wins, you win. But what makes Bruce Pearl Bruce Pearl?
Yeah, and I'll say with Pearl or any coaches, and I've had the pleasure of getting to cover a bunch of them with the SEC network. You got to be yourself, and when you go from an assistant to a head coach, or if you go from a graduate assistant to an assistant coach, yeah, you might have to wear a different hat. But if you try to be somebody you're not, it's going to come off fake. The players won't respect it, and Pearl was that way. He coached in a time when Pat Summitt was still at the very top, and still is to this day, even in her passing. But when she had Candace Parker, and they're winning national championships, and she was kind of the standard of coaching, and he'd always say, he was like, man, I learned so much from her, but at the end of the day, I got to be myself. I can't be exactly like Pat Summitt. If I try to mimic that to my players, they'll be like, wait, who is this guy? So you got to find what works best for you. Be willing to adjust and learn. To keep with the Tennessee theme a little bit, look at the feature on Rick Barnes yesterday on
Yep.
SportsCenter. Here's a guy that talked about, when he was younger, he would get on the players, but looking back on it, he wasn't getting on the players to make them better. He was getting on them because they weren't doing a good enough job to make him win. And it was all about him getting that next step in his coaching career and the resume. And now he's in it for all the right reasons, and it's just about team, and you see the identity that's created, because it does. The identity that a coach brings is the greatest example of it all starting from the top down, and you see it with Bruce Pearl, or whether it's just defensive minded coaches, Bob Huggins or Rick Barnes, we talked about, Frank Martin. Those teams take on the identity of their coach, and if you truly want them to do that, then you better be yourself, and it better be a good identity. And you got to be willing to look in the mirror and admit where you're wrong, and not to ramble too much. The other thing I've seen, some of the biggest strengths and weaknesses between coaches, don't be afraid to hire people that are better than you in certain areas. Man, if you're insecure and you're out there like not wanting to get exposed a little bit on things you're not great at, you're going to hire a weaker staff than you should, and before you know it, you're going to be out the door.
Well, I ain't gonna lie, you probably could be an AD, Dane. Former's not worried. People
I know
love
you're in
you.
the agency business now, but you're sounding like a good agent for me.
I'm going to tell you. No, I think going back to the coach, I think you got to be comfortable. Absolutely, you better be comfortable in your own skin. Because you've got to, like Bruce Pearl and Rick Barnes are opposite guys. Completely opposite guys. But at the end of the day, they both win. And I've known Coach Barnes for a long time, known Coach Pearl for a long time. And what Rick Barnes has done but he's done it in his own way. But he's probably more comfortable in his own skin now than he was when he was 35 years old. And same thing with Bruce. He's already gone through his adversity, and now he's really, really comfortable in his own skin. He knows how to coach. That's what people don't understand about Bruce, is he can really, really coach. He can really coach the game. It's not, it is a lot of fun to go coach a Bradshaw and a Lofton and try to figure out a way to win. And now he's got better Bradshaws and better Loftons, and now he's winning more. But you got to be comfortable in your own skin, and you've been around. Start with Terry Tippett. You've been around some of the best in the country.
Well, and and going back to the roster, I think, and Pearl would admit this too, as you start to grow as a coach, and then all of a sudden you have access. Rick Barnes is meant to be that way right now. Not a single person on that #1 Tennessee team until last night's blowout at Kentucky, but none of them are a top 100 kid. But now all of a sudden he has access to all these top 100, top 20, top 10 even type kids. And I saw this happen with Bruce Pearl too, where he was winning with mid-major type talent. And then all of a sudden you have access to better athletes, more highly touted recruits. But do they fit your system? Shaka Smart struggling right now at Texas. I think a big part of that was transitioning from VCU and the type of players he had, the hungry, shorter, they could control the tempo, and then you get a different type of athlete that doesn't fit that system. And it happened some when Bruce started to get more recruits, and it became an adjustment period. And you got to be willing to make adjustments to best fit your roster. But at the same time, I think in hindsight, Bruce, Shaka Smart, or any of those guys would say, once I had access to those players, maybe I got so enamored with the type of player I could get that I started to neglect the type of system that we have. And I think that's a really a fine line, and not getting too greedy with the type of players that you can recruit.
It's called don't getting tricked by talent. And it's hard. And you're exactly right. When Rick Barnes got to Tennessee, it wasn't popular to go play basketball at Tennessee. So he got the guys that fit him, fit his system. And you're right, now he can go get involved with whoever he wants to. Same thing with Bruce Pearl. I had long talks with Coach Pearl about, he had a mid-major. Y'all played with a mid-major mindset. You play, that's why Skylar McBee can go be a good player at the University of Tennessee, and we recruited him. It came down to Chattanooga at East Tennessee State and walking on at Tennessee. But he kind of fit that. And the higher level you go, if you just get tricked by talent, it can take you down. And he wasn't as successful with those great players as he was kind of the mid-major types. And the same thing with Rick Barnes. You got to stay true to who you are in your system. And I always go back, and everybody thinks I'm in love with Rick Byrd, and I am in love with Rick Byrd.
You should be. Everybody should be.
Because he has stayed true to Belmont. He has stayed true to his system. He has stayed true to his recruitment. Mike Young at Wofford. All of a sudden, here it's going to get tricky now. Mike Young at Wofford, they're 15-0 in the Southern Conference. They're phenomenal. They're almost a borderline top 25 team. They had one of the worst places to play in the country, and now they've got a brand new $52 million arena, the Jerry Richardson Indoor Stadium. $52 million. That's what you and Thunder made last year, Dane. $52 million. So they got a $52 million arena. Now you got to stay true to who you are, and Mike Young staying true to who he is. It's very difficult, and it kind of goes back. We did a podcast on kind of cancer, not the disease, but cancers on your team. And once you bring in one or two, and then all of a sudden they start outweighing the good guys, now you got some issues, and now you can't recover from that. But I'm assuming you see that all the time.
Though, and guys of that experience, I talked with Kermit Davis, head coach at Ole Miss, who'd been at Middle Tennessee State for 15 plus years and more than paid his dues. But all the guys that you just mentioned, with their experience, they can sense that stuff out. Like, hey, where are these problems start to come up? Or, hey, that player's body language, this could manifest into something bigger, and all of a sudden it becomes that cancer that you're talking about. And what I've loved seeing, and it's happened a lot in the SEC, but is instead of just hiring the young and up-and-coming coach that, might be in his 30s and, they went on to a Sweet 16 run. But, other than that, there's not much on the coaching resume. And that used to be the popular hire for ADs all around the country. And now you're starting to see, wait a minute, Rick Barnes is not, a recycled coach. He hadn't peaked yet. And Tennessee picks him up. Bruce Pearl left for different reasons in Tennessee, but he still got it at Auburn. Frank Martin was a lateral move over to South Carolina. He takes them to a Final Four. Ben Howland, maybe he's not washed up. He's about to take Mississippi State to an NCAA tournament. Yep. And now Kermit Davis going to be able to do that in the first year. My good buddy Steve Forbes at East Tennessee State, he's one of those examples where it's like, hey, get past the fact that these guys are in their 50s. I mean, all that means is they got 20 good years ahead of them, and they got 20 good years behind them. I love all the names you're mentioning because, yes, it's been a while. Rick Byrd at Belmont and Mike Young at Wofford, but man, if I'm an AD, I'm not giving up on trying to maybe get them to a big job if it opens up.
What happens is ADs wait. I'm not picking on ADs, but ADs wait. Whoever makes that run in the NCAA tournament, I pluck him out. Well, maybe he's struggled for 2 years, and they just had a 1 year run. All right, and he is the flavor of the month. And all of a sudden, boy, do I look good. I look good in that press conference. And the problem is the press conference lasts an hour, and your career lasts way more than an hour. And you can't just focus on that press conference. You got to make the right decision. Kermit.
Well, and the smart play is to get somebody that maybe didn't make the tournament, that lost in their, the Southern Conference Championship or whatever it might be, and couldn't get to it. And guess what? He's not the flavor of the month. And now you can get them cheaper because you don't have to compete against everybody.
Well,
but you got to be willing to take that PR risk of, hey, I know my fan base might not be excited on day one of the press conference, but just wait till we're in non-conference play and this guy's knocking it out of the park.
I mean, it's like Kermit. I think Kermit's one of the elite coaches in America. And if you just had gone off of last year, I remember going down and watching them practice right after they clinched the regular season, where they get upset in the tournament. So they clinch the regular season championship. They get beat, I think, by Marshall in the last game of the regular season, and then they got beat again by Marshall, I think, in the tournament. And so all of a sudden, I'm assuming because Kermit didn't go to the NCAA tournament last year, he had absolutely forgotten how to coach. He wasn't a good coach anymore, and because he didn't go to the tournament. Well, that's for mid-major leagues, and I was a head coach at Chattanooga, lucky enough to go to 2 NCAA tournaments. But for a mid-major league, it really comes down to you better be good, and you better be lucky, and you better have the right matchups, and that ball better go in that basket for 3 days in March. And if it does, you're a hero. And if it doesn't, you're not hot. And you're right. It's a tough profession out there. But ADs just can't want to make that popular hire at that moment because there's a lot of good people out there. You mentioned Steve Forbes. There's some high-level guys in the Southern, high-level guys all over the country, but really you just can't go off the last game or two. That was Eddie Fogler's major. I mean, he hated guys who said ADs and administrations going, well, let's just see how they finish. Let's see if they win the last 2 games of the season. So if you win the last 2 games, we want you. And if you don't win the last 2 games, we don't want you anymore. So what does 80 minutes of basketball have anything to do with if you want that coach or not?
I'm completely with you. And, Kermit Davis is the perfect example because he's the most recent one. And I'm thrilled for his success because I hope it continues this pattern of, not looking at the last 2 games, but looking at the last 10 years for some of these guys and then make a decision off of that because it doesn't matter. Someone will say, oh, yeah, well, yeah, they did that because they had a lot of transfers or they use a lot of JUCO guys. It doesn't matter if you got a good coach that knows how to coach them up and do all the things we've talked about on this podcast. It doesn't matter if you put them at Harvard or if you put them at the easiest school to get in academically in America. They're going to find guys and they're going to get wins. And, the winners are winners. And I hope that we start to or continue to see that trend. And we'll see in this off season with, the FBI impact still isn't over. And so we'll see what openings may come up that maybe weren't expected and which, again, could be a win for the good guys that we've mentioned on this show.
Well, I've talked about I actually did an interview with someone. He asked me about the FBI deal. And I said, either this is their chance. All right, this is the NCAA's chance. Either take the tapes after the last trial has been played out, take the tapes and clean it up, and really clean it up, or just let it turn, or just let it go and let it be the wild, wild west and have a good time. And you can line up after an AAU tournament and have your checkbooks out there and write them a check and go play ball. Or really do a good job right now. This is the NCAA's chance to, I think, really clean it up if they will use their opportunity.
Yeah, I'm really anxious to see what they do, and it's going to be tough because, you're right. The easy way would be, okay, look, the FBI already did its thing. Yes, we have tapes, but we're just going to move on. And because the challenge is going to be, at least from what you read out there, is it's not going to be an instance where they only got tapes on some of the expendable schools.
Exactly.
And so if they're going to take down, the less financially impactful school on the NCAA tournament versus some of the big dogs that they make a lot of money off of, they're going to have to do both. And so, but the advisory, the committee, and all that, I respect all the people they have on that board. I'm not saying the name of the board correctly, but at the same time, as well as anybody, it's like, to me, put a couple guys on there that have been at the JUCO ranks or coached some AAU or been some of the top recruiters across the country, as opposed to somebody that you would hire as a CEO. I want somebody that's been in the weeds, that knows how stuff got done.
Absolutely, because CEOs don't understand. They are so far removed. They're flying at 15,000 feet. Find some guys who've been running around the jungle. Find some guys who've been running around the weeds and exactly right. But they don't ever do that. If you really want to know what's going on in college basketball, hire a former assistant, pay them a lot of money, and say, help us clean this up. And this is what's being this is what's going on. But that's another. Listen, we could do about a 5-hour podcast on it. All right, let me ask you the last thing, because you've been phenomenal, a lot better than I thought you'd be, just like as a player, Dane. All right. Let me ask you this. Okay, so two things. Number one, I've got a lot of Tennessee fans that are now in the mope because of last night, and I said, y'all, that was great for the University of Tennessee. That was what they needed, especially at the end of the year. That's exactly what they needed. Lipscomb got the other night exactly what they needed to kind of clean themselves up and go back and refocus. You're a Tennessee guy, correct, incorrect, getting blasted by Kentucky last night. Would you not rather be blasted by Kentucky right now or in the tournament?
I totally agree, because there's a good chance Tennessee will see Kentucky 3 times before the NCAA tournament, and losing at Rupp, losing on your home court later in the season, or losing in the SEC tournament. Like it was, Tennessee wasn't going to win 3 in a row against Kentucky. I mean, that was as good as they are. It's tough enough to beat a team twice, much less a good team 3 times. So, yeah, it exposed some things, and Tennessee missed some shots they normally make, but Grant Williams hadn't necessarily been getting the whistle. I mean, that he got, say against Vanderbilt when he was at the free throw line 23 straight times, and I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not making excuses, but he was getting a really favorable whistle. That seems to have come down here recently when you look at the first half of that game, and no free throws at all for Tennessee. And they didn't give many free throws for Kentucky either, so I'm not saying that as an excuse. But when that guy, like, I think 25% of his points came from the free throw line, something like that, that's a big part of his game. And so when he's not getting there as frequently, all right, we got to make some adjustments.
Well, that was a grown man's game last night. If you weren't a grown man, you couldn't have played in that game. And also, you better be in shape, because the officials didn't blow the whistle for like 2 media timeouts. You would hate that as a. I
know Jordan Bone was out there trying to speed everybody up, man. He was in better shape than anybody.
He was the only guy in good shape. Grant Williams looked at him going, "We slow down. Let's run a couple sets. Let's run a couple sets." And as a color guy on SEC Network, as a color guy, you would have hated that because you didn't get on TV a lot. And you're an attractive guy. That's why you're doing color. All right. How many teams get in the tournament from the SEC? A bunch.
They say 8. I'm going to go 7. I just think Alabama, Florida. I think one of those. I think only one of those 2 get in rather than both.
Can an SEC team win a national championship this year?
Oh, of course, absolutely. I think they've got. Going into the season, you thought that would be 3 teams: Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn. As the season went on, you thought it was only Tennessee. Now, as we get further into it, Kentucky's certainly in that mix, as we saw last night, with Auburn still figuring things out. I just don't think Auburn will get a high enough seed to position themselves well enough, even though I think they can peak later on. I just don't think their seeding is going to give them a good enough path to to be a contender.
Tennessee's got a chance. I think after last night, I think they have a chance to go win it because of last night. And probably Kentucky's got a chance to win it because of last night, too, because I think they kind of showed themselves, oh, man, I mean, we do have some five-star guys, and we're pretty good at what we can do. If they defend like that and they're physical like that, I think they got a chance to they really defend. It's probably one of his better defensive teams.
Well, it's become their identity, and he said last year he had to coach a lot more effort, and coaches hate that, as you know. And this team that toughness maybe hadn't been consistently there, but you can tell that it was within the realm of possibilities for them. And Ashton Hagens being the head of the Snakes there, and that identity, and he's brought the best out of P.J. Washington, who's been sensational. But long way to go, man. We'll see.
Well, if you got a Hagens out there pressuring that ball coming down the floor, it juices up everybody else. And so you got to head that snake out there going after it. Then everybody else kind of gets a little juiced up and they defend. And who's better, Dane Bradshaw or Hero for Kentucky?
Hey, man, Hero, it's what it is, man. I know where my strengths and weaknesses are. How about him, man? First of all, to answer your question, clearly Hero, but
he's phenomenal.
And there's a great story on him in the Athletic, how he didn't make the McDonald's All-American team, and his coach, his dad said, when it got released, the first thing he did was he got mad and he picked up his gym bag, got his ball, and went straight to the gym that night. I mean, that's a great lesson for young players out there.
It's just amazing what some of those kids, either pout, whine and complain and pout about it, or you do something about it. And he did something about it because he's my favorite player on their team. He was phenomenal. But you were one of my favorite players, and let me just say, there's no way Hero can walk around a neighborhood wearing a Spider-Man outfit like Dane Bradshaw.
Especially with no kids in sight.
Absolutely. Listen, take your children next time. You just walk around by yourself, and it looks a little funny because you're a little too old to trick or treat like that. But you look pretty good in that outfit. Hey, Dane, thanks so much for your time today, and really appreciate it. And you're doing a great job with the SEC Network, and you got a huge career in that. You're one of those guys that could. You got a huge career, whatever you want to do, because going back to. I'm assuming that when you were a little peewee playing middle school, your teams won in middle school, correct?
Yeah, man. We had a pretty good run. So.
Well, I'm assuming that you've won in middle school, won in high school, won in college, won in life. You're doing pretty good. I'm assuming you're a winner. Why don't you come work with me? You make me look better.
No, I don't know. Man, I'm only as good as the people that are around me, and I just don't think that you and I don't know how much I would compliment your talent and vice versa.
I'm still trying to find my talent, my friend.
You'd be bringing me down, taking me back to 05 Chattanooga.
Oh man, trapping
every time, and I'd be losing confidence every day.
You thought double fist in 42. You thought we were calling a number. We were trapping the living fire out of you, young man. All right, that goes back to Carolina action. Buzz knew what we were doing. You just didn't. Hey, listen. Thanks so much for your time. Phenomenal advice for players. Great advice for coaches. Thanks for your insight. Appreciate your time.
You got it. Thanks so much.
All right, buddy. Take care.